Croc Legend of the Gobbos was well received at the time of the release. It was then that in 1999, its sequel, Croc 2, followed suit. Croc 2 came out on PS1 and PC. There was plan for it to come out on the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast, which was going to be the definitive version, even including a new village that was cowboy themed.
Since I did a retrospective on Croc 1, I figured we'd do one on Croc 2. You never know, there is potential now to get a Croc 2 remaster alongside Croc 1. Although I feel like not many people really talk about Croc 2, so I want to see why. Let's get into it. Let's break Croc 2 down and see what it's all about.
In the first game, Croc was found as a baby by the Gobbo King and was raised amongst the Gobbos. This time, Croc finds himself on a new adventure to find his parents. We start off with a scene of a Gobbo inventor creating a plane. After hearing some strange chanting, he discovers Dantinis who look like to be performing a ritual. From the portal they made, Baron Dante is resurrected. Before the Gobbo could flee, however, he is captured. Meanwhile, Croc is playing with his Gobbo friends on a beach when a note in a bottle washes up on the shore. The note has a crocodile footprint on it, and the king reads it's a message from Croc's parents and that it came from the mainland. With the help of the Gobbos, Croc makes his way to the mainland to find his parents, while being unaware that Baron Dante is back to cause trouble once again. Just like the first game, mostly a straightforward story. Croc goes to find his parents, Baron Dante somehow comes back and will get in Croc's way. As Croc arrives in Sailor Village, he is greeted by a Gobbo who tells him about this cat guy named Swamp Meat Pete and gives him a loyalty card for his shop. Villages act like a hub world to levels. There are 4 villages in total. 5 levels except for the final village that has 2. The 4 villages are Sailor Village, your grasslands, Cossack Village, your snowlands, Caveman Village, your prehistoric lands, and Inca Village, which is more grasslands but with a tiki theme, temples and stone-like structures. All the Gobbos will have outfits depending on the village. First one, they are all dressed like sailors. Do you remember I mentioned they planned another village? Well, you can see a Gobbo dressed like a cowboy on the instructions manual that's not in the game. Croc 2 has a mission-like structure with how it handles its levels. A Gobbo will have a request that Croc must fulfill to proceed to other villages and find info on his parents. There are 2 boss fights in each village. The second boss is a Baron Dante minion. Saving the inventor will get Croc to his parents. Missions can range from finding a key to rescue a Gobbo, chasing someone down, finding a certain number of collectibles, or various gimmicks such as boat racing, riding a snowball, air gliding, kart racing, etc. Unlike its previous game, Croc 2 is more of a mixture of platforming and vehicles, kind of like Crash Bandicoot 3, though it's still mostly platforming. So you may have noticed the Gobbo's design is surprisingly different in the game. I do like the outfits they wear, but I personally prefer the simplistic Karibo looking fuzzy creatures in the first one compared to 2. They look less fuzzy here and more like, I guess, actual fur, which isn't bad, just feels like they stood out more in Croc 1 and looked more adorable. Speaking of platforming, let's bring up how Croc controls this time around, as it has been changed. For the most part, he functions the same as he does in the first game. However, Croc feels a lot looser than the tank controls of Croc 1. He feels quicker and a bit more responsive. At the time of this video, the Croc remaster is out, and it's sort of similar to that, but the remaster does overall control better. If you are someone who prefers the tank controls of how he felt though, might not be a fan here. That's not the only change though, the climbing speed. Croc climbs much faster now, which I personally think is an improvement. I can't comment on swimming really, since it's all but gone in this game. Croc only swims above water, and controls fine enough, no deep diving. Croc's abilities are the same outside of the stump and one new jump. Now, if you press the stump button 3 times, he will bounce up for a higher height, which they call a triple jump. While running, press the shoulder buttons L1 and R1 to make Croc do a flip jump. It reminds me of the long jump in 3D Mario games, though I never really found no use of it in this game. You can beat the game without using it once. There's two new things Croc can interact with. He can jump on swinging ropes and pick up certain objects like small TNT boxes and throw them. So this time around, Croc's got even more to his arsenal. However, let's not forget Pete's shop. Swamp Meat Pete has a shop in each village. He's also how you get from one village to the next. Crystals previously were used for hit points, but now they are used for currency, which you exchange at Pete's shops for items. Remember the jellies from Croc 1? Now you can purchase different jellies to place in certain areas of the level. There's 3 different types, one for small, medium and large, green, orange and red. You can also purchase this robot gobbo called the Clockwork Gobbo that you remotely control on these spots in certain levels. Usually using these are for the colored crystals that make a return, so they are really only necessary if you plan on getting the crystals. The downside is that if you are going for completion, you are going to be constantly purchasing this robot toy, so make sure you have plenty of crystals. Also, when you first play the game, since you don't know which robo section has a crystal, you could waste one of them and have to buy another one. Again, only an issue if you go for full completion, but it's definitely worth noting. The other item you can purchase is heart pots. Yes, lives in Croc 2 are gone and replaced with a hit point system. If you get hit too many times, you game over. So really, it's kind of like having lives, except when you get hit, you just carry on rather than being taken back, unless you fall into a pit. But because you have limited hit points, it's worth buying these pots in the shop when they are available. You can even do side quests with gobbos hanging out in the village that will sometimes give you heart pots. We've also got checkpoints now in the form of gongs with a footprint on it. Levels in Croc 2 can go on much longer than Croc 1, and their designs tend to be quite different depending on the stage. Some stages just loop around completely and doesn't really have an end, but you can leave the same way you entered. Definitely a different approach in this game. In terms of Croc's controls though, I actually think I prefer how he is in this game. In terms of other controls like the vehicles and gimmicks, the boat for example has a bit of a stiff turn, but for what you are doing here, and it's the only time you do it, it's fine. Race isn't even that hard. That's the thing about Croc 2, it has a few ideas that only really get used once. Even if you do another race, it's in prehistoric go-karts and controls differently to the boat. The only one I have trouble with is this snowball one. Yeah, I'm not a fan here, very easy to fall off. The hang glider level is pretty simple really. You gently move in the direction you aim Croc. Has one of the best music tracks in the game by the way. I feel like I've ascended to heaven every time I hear it. Since we are on the topic of music, let's talk about Croc 2's original soundtrack. Most of Croc 2's music are remixed tracks from Croc 1, though there are definitely some originals like the hang glider one I mentioned. I think the soundtrack is solid, but does not hit the highs of Croc 1. Croc 1 is just so good that it almost feels like the expectation is so high to meet, but I wouldn't say Croc 2's is bad, it's just that Croc 1 is too good. I mentioned that the colored crystals make a return. You may also have noticed the designs for the crystals have also changed. Once again, I think it comes down to preferences, but they stood out more in Croc 1. In Croc 2 they look more like Crash Bandicoot gems, or actual crystals. Fun fact, depending on which version of the game you are playing, the jellies are different as well. In the American version, they were gummy savers, which I'm going to assume is some sort of sweet. They had a licensing affiliation with Croc 2, where Croc would appear on the packets for featuring the sweets. I'm surprised they didn't do the same for the UK version. Anyway, back to the colored crystals. When you do get them all, a golden gobbo trophy will appear. Collect it and you will get transported to a small challenge section where if you succeed, you get to keep the trophy. These challenges will definitely test you, but are optional unless you want the 100% save file. Once you have all the trophies in the village, you can unlock the special trophy level where a puzzle piece can once again be found, just like Croc 1. Let's talk about the enemies in the game. Their teenies naturally make a return alongside their boss, but you could say they look a bit different. They are huge, like twice the size of what they were in Croc 1. Baron Dante, what have you been feeding them? Although much beefier than their previous incarnations, I find them overall easier to deal with. You've got other creatures like various giant bugs, skeletons, these very strange looking things in the caveman world. Even some of the Dentinis are dressed. Did I forget that there's talking in this game? Because there is. It's mostly gibberish, but with actual text on screen to see what everyone is saying. Croc talks, the gobbos talk, Baron Dante and his minions talk. There's something about the simplicity of the storytelling in Croc 1 that I really like. Croc 2 is going for a more Banjo-Kazooie take with everyone talking in mumbo jumbo. As for the boss fights, they act similar to the first game, where you enter a stage and make your way to the end where the boss is located. The inhabitants tend to be dealing with some problem that they need Croc to take care of, then followed by a fight with one of Baron Dante's minions, and then eventually Baron Dante himself. I would say compared to Croc 1, these boss fights definitely provide a bit more challenge. I would still say they aren't hard per se, but not as easy. I think mostly because these fights will sometimes have you pushing and picking up objects to throw at the enemy, or at something that will hurt the boss. A few minecart levels here, some collectibles there, and we are face to face with the final challenge to fight Baron Dante. A plane section where you shoot him off a mountain, followed by some puzzles in a tower. Definitely different than Croc 1, although the minigames are different. Croc 2 throws most of them here. Baron Dante himself can't be hurt this time around, at least not directly. Instead, you dodge his attacks while the Gobbo Inventor uses crystals to open up a portal to send Baron Dante back to where he came. I didn't know the crystals could do that, but okay. After successfully banishing Dante, the Inventor takes Croc in his plane to reunite with his parents. Not only that, he has siblings. A very wholesome end. However, apparently Dante wasn't fully sealed away, I guess, since his hand pops on screen and steals crocodile eggs. So we aren't quite done. Now, if you've gathered all of the puzzle pieces, this is where we have our extra area of the game. We are transported into a copy of each village conjured up by Baron Dante. Except the only things here are Dantinis, and the eggs locked in cages. Croc must explore these final levels in order to unlock the cages and rescue the eggs. However, when you do it, it just ends very abruptly. No final boss or anything. I'm not entirely sure, but maybe this part wasn't fully completed. I assume this copy village is supposed to seem lifeless, but it makes me feel like there was more that was supposed to happen. If Croc 2 does get the remastered treatment, I think adding to this post game would be a great idea. I would change the music to something more ominous, and perhaps maybe add something more to the village. Maybe more enemies and a final boss. One last confrontation with Baron Dante. Either way, the credits are here. we end our journey through Croc 2. Croc 2 is a different overall experience compared to the first game, using villages as hubs to explore while giving us little side quests, as well as a mission to do in each level. While the gameplay mostly remains, it adds more mechanics such as items and vehicles to mix up the core platforming. For me, this is fine, as long as it's executed well. Even though Crash Warped also has vehicles and aren't the best part of that game, I still find it my personal favourite. However, it is a lot of fans' least parts of that game. And as for Croc 2, most of it was okay in my opinion, outside of the snowball. Could have done without that. I do find myself liking the simple straightforward structure of Croc 1, however there is still fun to be had in Croc 2, and visually it's a great looking PS1 game. I do think Croc 1 beats it though. A remaster could provide us with a definitive version, a version that improves on the issues, expands, and perhaps gives us that cowboy village that never made it. I can see Croc 2 being a bit of a departure in how it handles its levels in which fans may not enjoy. It's not simply a start to finish anymore, it's a find the thing. Reminds me a little bit of Spyro 2 and Year of the Dragon, but in those games some of these quests are optional unless you want 100%.
Looking back, I would say Croc 2 is definitely overall a different experience compared to Croc 1. Its level design, they go on much longer. The mission like structure, and of course the introduction of gimmicks and vehicles. And some of them gimmicks are quite fine in my opinion, like the minecart. Can be difficult at times, but I overall generally enjoyed it. I can see this being a little bit of a departure from Croc 1, especially if you prefer the pure platforming and you don't want those gimmicks, you don't want those vehicles that other platformer sequels tend to do, like Crash Bandicoot Warped for example. If you don't like that and you just want to stick to your pure platforming, then Croc 2 might not do it for you. Also, I just prefer how the gobbos look in Croc 1 personally, but the costumes that they wear, that's cute, right? I do think there is potential though. A remaster could really bump this game up, just like Croc 1. I'm really curious to see what they could do with it going forward, but that's going to be it. That's going to be my retrospective on Croc 2. If you do enjoy any of these retrospectives, be sure to give me a like on the video and let me know if you'd like me to cover any other platformers. Crash, Spyro, Rayman, Sonic, you name it. Let me know in the comments. But for now, check the video on screen right now for more.